Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Monday Morning MOCHA. Today, we are joined by the Vice President of Development and Communications for Square One. But before we get started, I forgot. I'm your host, Dr. Gregory Todd. It's nice to see you all.
You always want to tell people who you are.
I know. Before we get started, not only am I super grateful to have you here, but I get so much feedback about my guests, and you're one of those who people say amazing things about you.
Well, that is so kind because I am so excited to be here, and I hear the same kinds of things about you.
All lies.
No, never. No, I really am. I'm excited and grateful to have the opportunity to
thank you so much.
Be here.
Yeah, thank you. So before we get started, I know we've talked about this a couple of times, but tell us about your background as a TV radio host.
Yeah,
right?
I when I went to college, that was my plan.
Yeah.
I was going to work as a broadcast journalist. I was going to be in radio and TV news. I love news.
Yeah.
I love being in the know and being, the first person to find out. And so that was something that's always been of interest to me. And I did for a while. I worked in news in college and after college, and did some radio news and radio news programming, and worked for a while in television news, and went into TV as an assignment editor, which is sort of like you kind of have your thumb over the pulse of the newsroom. Honestly, nobody likes that job. I loved it. So it was great job security. Everybody, it's chaotic. And I kind of thrived in that chaos. So I loved it. And, you get to monitor all the breaking news and call reporters and photographers back from something that they're assigned to put them on breaking news and stuff. It's very exciting, but it's also a little risky because sometimes you miss something and then you're watching your competitors and you go, I missed that, and it falls on you. So you sort of get all of the blame and none of the glory, because when you send your crews out there, the reporter, does all the work and their photographer does all the work.
Yes.
And even though it might be your tip that you were kind of, going on, and then if you miss something, it's all on you. It's total, but it was okay. I can't really think of a time that I missed anything too significant, but in any case, I did that for quite a few years and really enjoyed it. And then my children came along, and that schedule is really hard to maintain and, be good to your family and be committed to a position
work-life
like
balance.
that. Yeah, it's really hard. So I left that world and kind of went to the other side of it a little bit and was working for an agency doing media relations and PR work for clients who were looking to get themselves on TV and radio and in print and things like that. So it was a good fit for me because I knew what people were looking for. I knew what the decision makers in the broadcast outlets were looking for. So a lot of our clients at that agency were nonprofits. People that don't have an internal person to be doing that work. So they would hire us to write their press releases. And I kind of caught the nonprofit bug there. And realized, people actually work in that field, that it's not all volunteers. People can take their skills and make a living and feel really good about the work that they were doing. So I kind of looked at that, and some things were changing. We were relocating, and I thought, well, maybe now's the time to take that leap and look into that. And I started a career with the YMCA.
Fantastic.
And where I was very active, I was an active volunteer. My children grew up in the Y. They were swim team kids and after school kids and summer camp kids. And so it was like, they kind of said, you're here enough anyway. Do you want to come join the staff? And did that for quite a few years, came here to Springfield and was working for the YMCA of Greater Springfield, which I am a big supporter, big fan of.
Thank you.
Still volunteer for the Y, teach spin class, Scantic Valley Y, 5:45 a.m. every Friday morning.
Fantastic.
And worked here for a while and until I landed the position that I'm working in at Square One now.
Fantastic. It's funny. This wasn't a question I was going to ask you, but I'm finding more and more, having been in this field myself for a number of years, that the people who thrive, if I can use that word, are usually the people that come in with a different background than nonprofit, maybe a for-profit background, or,
Well, that's very true
Yeah.
because, I have 2 young adult children. They're
Mhm.
24 and 22.
Mhm.
And, anytime they're kind of doubting, what should I be doing? And my son changed his mind. See, they both are in medical fields, and, he wasn't sure
Yeah.
if he was going to go to medical school, if
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
wanted to be a nurse, or
Yeah.
he's actually settled in and he's doing fantastic as a student at Westfield State in their PA program. But
Nice. Yeah.
my advice to him when he was kind of trying to figure all this out was, you don't have to have it all figured out at age
Yeah.
18. You
Yeah.
you have an
Yeah.
idea of what you're good at and where your skills are. But I said, take a look at my career.
Yeah.
Do you think anybody in the history of nonprofits, particularly people who raise money
Yeah.
as a job, said, I think I want to be a professional fundraiser when I'm in my
Yes.
career? No
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
has ever mouthed those words,
Yeah.
at least
Yeah.
no one I know. So things lead to things. And if you don't take those turns, your life's not a straight line, right?
Yeah.
You've got to veer off and take the branches, take the turns. Otherwise, you're going to really miss out on some good stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and it sounds like, and again, just talking to different people in the community, that you're amazing at what you do.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure.
I enjoy it. I'll tell you that. I
Yeah.
really enjoy it. And when you really believe in what you're doing, we have 500 little children with us every day,
Yeah.
all who I feel so passionately deserve an opportunity to do great things and to
Yeah.
be introduced to the things that are going to make them great.
Yeah. I love that.
And when you have that on your side, how do you not love your job?
Listen, you sound like your boss right now. It's great.
We're very
Fantastic.
close.
I
We are
know, I
very
know.
close.
So we were going to talk a little bit about partnerships
Mhm.
and I guess the dynamics of nonprofit partnerships in general, but also in Springfield as well. Um, why do you think partnerships are so important in general? Let's just say.
Because none of us can do this work by ourselves.
Yeah.
There isn't anything that we do at Square One that's done in isolation. We've
Yeah,
got
yeah.
partners involved, whether it's people helping to fund a program or a service that we're offering, whether it's other nonprofits that are bringing their expertise to the table,
Yeah. Yeah.
volunteers. We don't do anything by ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So why would you think that, or do you think that that's more important in Springfield? There's,
Mhm.
especially with the unique attributes that Springfield
Mhm.
brings. Yeah.
I think, what has changed for the better, I think, in my time here in Springfield. I've been here for going on 12 years in this area.
Yeah.
And what I've seen evolve is sort of that we've backed away from the protection of our stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my donor,
Yeah.
my program, and people have become more open to, hey, you know what, Square One, you've got this piece of this. We bring this. Like,
Mhm,
how about we
mhm,
collaborate and we'll have a more successful grant application,
mhm,
or we'll
mhm,
put this
mhm,
out there. We'll reach more people this way.
mhm.
So we're now, I hate to say that other nonprofits are competitors, but in some ways they are.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
we're working more collaboratively
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
even folks who we technically compete
Absolutely.
for funding.
Yeah.
And I think more and more funding organizations, whether it's corporate supporters in this area or foundations, they're looking for that. They ask you, who else is at the table with you?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
know, how are they going to make the most out of their investment? Where are we going to get the most reach?
Yeah.
It's a much healthier and much more successful way of doing things.
It is. And you know what I like about what you said? It seems like, ironically, more of a humanistic approach,
Mhm.
right? Because I know we focus on making our business better and making better decisions from a business perspective as an MPO, but also understanding that within this community, you have a million different needs that you have to attend
Mhm.
to, right? And I think partnerships just recognize that you can do that a little bit better.
Yeah,
you
for
know?
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think we're also we're not as threatened to send someone someplace else. I'll use the YMCA and Square One as an
Mhm,
example.
mhm, mhm,
If someone comes to us and asks for after school programming for a 13 or 14-year-old, well, we
mhm,
don't. Our age stops
mhm,
there. We
mhm,
stop at
mhm.
fifth grade with the children that we have with us every day. So guess who I am going to send them to? I'm going to send them to the YMCA
Yeah.
and contact my friends over there and say, I have somebody that would be a good candidate for YM.
Right.
And not be afraid that that person is no longer going to be an active square one family.
Right,
But our goal is to make sure that all children are cared for and served. And we're not doing that if we're only offering what we can do ourselves.
Absolutely.
And not everybody can do everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to extrapolate a little bit.
Mhm.
And because it seems like Square One has been around for a while.
Long time. 1883.
Right.
Believe it or not. Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of being settled in their identity,
Mhm.
right? So having that ability to not feel threatened by potential partners as stepping on the territory,
Mhm.
right? So how would you say like newer fledgling nonprofits could get to that point so as to benefit from partnerships faster? You know what I mean?
Well, I think every successful nonprofit has to accomplish three things.
Yeah.
You've got to have a heart for your mission. You have to believe in what you're doing. You have to feel really strongly that the work that you're doing, and because we work really hard.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to work that hard, you have to really truly believe what you're doing, and it's got to be in your heart.
Mm-hmm,
So you have to have a heart for the mission that you're doing. You have to have a mind for business.
Yeah.
You can mission yourself right into bankruptcy. And if you're not paying attention to your organization as a business and focusing on your budget and making really difficult decisions sometimes about having to eliminate positions or, shrink services and tighten your belt when you have to. That's really hard because it's hard to feel good about what you're doing if you're doing it for fewer people at that point. So, but having that sharp mind for business is really critical, and you have to respect the politics behind things.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that just as in respecting your elected officials. I mean, there's politics in everything, right? So you have to understand the history and respect where people are coming from and be able to work within that. So those three things, the heart for what you're doing, the sharp mind for running your organization like a business, and respecting all the history and the politics behind it. If you're not doing all those things, you're going to really struggle. And, the other critical key in any success as a nonprofit organization is good, solid, clear communication. Consistency in that is really important. You can't be something one day and then tell somebody else the next day that you're doing things differently and then change your mind again. That consistency and that clarity in your communication, everything from your branding, the language standards that you're using, clarity in the colors and the use of your logo and all of that has to be really clear and consistent.
That's understandable. Yeah. So what advice would you give to a fledgling nonprofit, or not even fledgling, that because and again, I agree with you about being able to recognize political climates, political on a lot of different levels.
Right.
How do you step into that without jeopardizing your mission, so to speak, compromising your direction, so to speak, not making yourself political, but still being able to recognize these, the operations of things.
It's a fine line, and it's tough to know which side of that line to be on sometimes, because, if you're feeling really strongly about something and you don't want to dial back with, how passionate you are about something, or you feel really strongly that something needs to happen a certain way, well, then you shouldn't compromise on that. You're going to have to align yourself with the people who share that, right? And where you have that in common versus trying to adjust and acquiesce, which is okay in other circumstances. If you think, all right, my goal is to get this done. I'm not going to be able to do it this way. I haven't had success doing it this way. How do I change my approach so that I can get the support I need to be successful in that? And that's always, the advice I would have for anyone who's struggling in the nonprofit field. Find people who believe in you. I mean, people give to people, right?
Absolutely.
So and people will sense the sincerity in what you're doing, and you can't really bounce around from nonprofit to nonprofit think that people are going to continue to respect and understand that this is super important to you, right? So you can't be an expert on all things and be an expert in health one day, and then the next day you're positioning yourself as an expert in education, and then the next day you're positioning yourself as an expert in pets, right? So because then you sort of lose that the believability, the trust factor.
It becomes a lot more diluted.
Right.
The focus.
So you have to build trust, and relationships are where it's at. You've got to stay out there, and that's a lot of work. It's a lot of early mornings and late evenings, and out there, networking and spreading the message and talking to people and helping them to. When you build that relationship, you hopefully build trust and belief in what you're doing. Share experiences with people, invite them in to have an experience. I often say to people all the time that, at Square One, we have the hundreds of these beautiful little children at all times. I can go out and I can describe to everyone the circumstances that they're coming from, how awesome these kids are, and all the great opportunities there. Or I can invite people in and have them come and visit with our children, read a story, do a project with them, teach them a craft, play music, whatever your talent is. And people will walk out after spending a half an hour and go, I get it. What can I do here? How do I get involved? What do you need? How can I support you? Much more impactful that way.
People, if you are listening, experiential investment for funders is key.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. And again, as you can tell, I can talk. I can talk all day long, and
it's fun.
But there's nothing better than coming in and having that experience for yourself.
Yeah. I think, and again, I'm reaching a little bit, but sometimes I feel like there is a lack of sincerity amongst nonprofit organizations in terms of funding, and we're in pursuit of this, the almighty dollar. But sometimes we say, okay, let's compromise our mission, so to speak, and make ourselves less authentic. I think that's the word that I'm looking for. How do you encourage nonprofits to still be authentic?
Well, I think it gets back to what we were talking about a little while ago. Is if you're hone in on what you're doing and own the piece of the community that you're doing really well. Invite other people in when there's a gap to fill in something that's not your area of expertise. So that to me lends to the credibility and believability of things. We're not going to be all things to all people. But there are lots of other organizations. I think a good example is, a family coming into us and needing care for their children. And maybe they want to get involved in some of the parenting programs that we offer, our home visiting models, things like that. But then we determine that they need a safer, healthier home. Their home is not supportive of what they need to have a healthy family.
Right.
We're not real estate agents. We are not experts in housing. Guess who we're going to call? I'm going to call my friend Denise Jordan at Springfield Housing Authority. I'm going to call my friends over at Wayfinders and say, hey, we have a family, is there someone here that I can connect them with? You can't be all things to all people, but you can certainly connect them to all the other areas out there. The minute you try to be everything to everyone, you're just spread so thinly that you're not going to be good at any of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last thing I want to ask you, and we can delve into this a little bit. I did some research on corporate nonprofit partnerships, and I came across, a lot of examples for bigger nonprofits and bigger corporations, right? So I guess my first question to you would be, how evident is there this partnership for smaller nonprofits? Are these partnerships exist? Do they exist?
Absolutely. As I said before, we don't do anything in isolation. There isn't anything that we do that doesn't have a partner to it, whether that's another nonprofit or a corporate sponsor. And I think the key is it has to be a mutually beneficial relationship.
Absolutely.
You have to have the trust of the decision makers in a corporate environment. When you look at a community like Springfield, that I don't know, we've got like thousands of nonprofit organizations here in Western Massachusetts,
Yeah. Yeah.
all with a very worthy mission. But everybody's knocking on the same doors for
Yes.
funding,
Yeah. Yeah.
and competing in that way. And there's only so much that each of these what limited big organizations we have here can do. So how do you establish yourself as a viable organization? Well, you show gratitude and you make the donor understand that we couldn't do this by ourselves.
Yeah,
And you're
yeah.
not just somebody writing a check, you're a partner
Yeah,
in
yeah.
this. And your partnership is making a big difference. In our case, it's in the lives of these children and their families.
Yeah, yeah.
So showing appreciation, making the corporate donors feel valued and feeling a part of things, so that it's not just like you're going back to them for a check every year,
Absolutely.
which we do. We have to do that. I mean, it would be naive to think that we don't need funding. We have to raise a lot of money every year to do what we do. But if you're communicating things right and you're cultivating those relationships and making people feel like a valued part of the success that you're having, you don't have to do that uncomfortable ask.
Right.
People want to continue to support you.
So a couple of years ago, I was doing some research on strategic philanthropy. Is that still such a thing?
Sure.
Okay. So that being said, is it something that for-profits really emphasize now? So, using your example, nonprofits becoming more viable for corporate partnerships. Do for-profits consider themselves or look at themselves and say we should be more viable for nonprofit partnerships?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think when you look at, I'll use the banking community, for example, here. Our banking community is, it's big here. There are a lot of banks around, and almost all have some community, a commitment to community, right? Whether that's funding or volunteerism or a combination of both.
Yeah.
And when you look at that, each bank has something different, right? A different funding thrust, a different area of interest, which is good, right? You don't want all of these financial organizations funding the same pockets of the community.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to be done here, and a lot of organizations that need support in doing, fulfilling their piece of all that work.
Yeah.
So if you look at something, or in my case, I'm reading, oh, good, gosh, so and so just supported Dakin Humane Society, and then you look at the description of their philanthropic arm, and they say they're passionate about animal care. I'm not going to apply for that organization because I'm not someone who's doing so. I look for, when I hear about things or I research, and you want to find the organization that aligns with what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And luckily here, again, getting back to my point, there are countless organizations doing fantastic work here, but not every funder is going to be a fit for each of those organizations. So the corporate supporters, and you're talking about being strategic with that, I'm not going to apply to a corporate supporter that I can't meet their standards. And most of them have like sort of a checklist, that you have to go through and pass a little quiz before you actually become eligible to complete the application. So if you take a few minutes and you do that and you realize, oh, good, I am a fit, I am going to get an invitation to apply for funding. Or they say, you know what, you're actually not the right fit for us. And again, once you've had that nice relationship, they might be able to refer you to somebody who is.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Relationships.
Yeah, very important. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
You are a rock star.
Aww.
That's all I can say. Thank you. Everybody, thank you for listening. And until next time, have a great day.